What is up? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back and welcome into another edition of the Jay and Sir podcast. It has been a couple weeks since we have come on to talk Mariners baseball. I had some Wi-Fi issues last night, so I couldn't do we were going to do it last night and kind of break down the game a little bit, but not the worst thing to take a break from the Mariners yesterday. So we are going to talk about the Twins series that the Mariners lost 2 out of 3. We'll talk a little bit about where the Mariners are in the standings, the month of June, and then talk a little about what we think the team might do here with the upcoming trade deadline that is just a month away now as we are officially in July. Before I dive any further, do me a favor, smash the like button, hit subscribe if you're new, and comment your thoughts down below. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing well. Feel like it'll be a little bit different show. The first one I can think of that we've done with the Mariners kind of sliding like this. So, been a rough stretch, but doing well otherwise.
Well, it'll be a good therapy session for us to talk about the team over the last few weeks. Obviously, the Mariners lose 2 out of 3 to Minnesota. Prior to that, they had a 3-6 road trip in Cleveland, Tampa, and Miami, then Tampa. So the Mariners have actually lost 4 series in a row. And unfortunately, it's coincided with Houston just refusing to lose a baseball game. The Mariners' 10-game lead is now down to 3. It was 3.5, but Houston won again today. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But first, let's dive into the Minnesota Twins series. I'll make it real quick. Probably with the way that series played, lucky to win 1, because I don't think they played all that well on Friday, and they found a way. What were your thoughts on the Twins series?
Yeah, just another frustrating series. I didn't realize, but Sunday they made mention that we were like 0 for 22 at one point with runners in scoring position. And to me, it didn't feel like we had even that many opportunities. And so I think we had more traffic than maybe I realized. But overall, the at-bats just weren't good. And I think kind of what I realized from the Twins is, they scored 5 runs Saturday and Sunday. Didn't feel like their bats were like the first game I thought they were drilling the ball all around. We held them 2 games, but they did what I would love the Mariners offense to do. They scratched 1-2 across against good, starting pitching. And then they got a big home run late against relievers. And next thing you know, they got 5 runs and they win a ball game. So to me, it was just kind of a good example on the Twins side of, what you would love to see a team do against good pitching. And it's, just get a couple runs in a big blow. But on the Mariners side, I thought our pitching did pretty well. A couple untimely home runs from the bullpen, but overall, the offense just continued to struggle. I think even Luke Raley said it after Sunday that like our timing's just horrible and critical moments we're not getting the job done, and it all adds up to a couple losses. To your point, it was a fortunate win on Friday where we just seemed to scratch across a few runs we shouldn't have, and then even Sunday we almost did it again somehow. But definitely some concerning, I think, things that we saw, and the offense just simply has to be better or we're in big trouble.
Yeah. And the starting pitching was actually pretty good. Logan Gilbert was solid. He got hit kind of hard, but managed to keep the Twins off the board. And Logan's been so good that, even when he's not at his best, I kind of give him a pass. He battled through it and pitched well. Thought Bryce Miller threw the ball pretty well on Saturday. And Castillo pitched pretty well on Sunday. It was a little unfortunate. He probably would have gone 6. But with losing Mitch Garver, he had to bat. Then they had to pinch hit for him on Sunday, so that kept him out. I thought you made a great point about the Twins offense. I think a perfect example of that, I said it on Twitter, the first inning yesterday, I don't want to just harp on one inning, was kind of a microcosm of the two teams. Now, they have the same records, I think, so I'm not trying to claim that Minnesota is a world beater and the Mariners are terrible. But in the first inning yesterday, Willie Castro, just kind of a seeing eye single, steals second base, and then I forgot who it was. It might have been Miranda, just kind of off the end of the bat, flicks one into center field. 1-0. I didn't think Castillo threw the ball poorly that inning, and the Twins found a way to get a run. You go to the Mariners, JP, same thing, leadoff single. I think Julio, or it was a wild pitch or something. They get him to third, and the Mariners can't get that run across. They don't find the way to put that ball in play to get it across. And to your point, it's like it wasn't that Castillo was getting shelled in that first inning and the Twins blast him. Just kind of blooped a couple in there and found a way. And that's just something the Mariners don't seem to do. They don't seem to find that timely hit. And it's a shame that Luke Raley has to be the guy that mentions it. And he called himself out, which, he's being a good teammate with that, but he's probably the last guy that should be getting any blame for anything right now. Thoughts on the offense again in the Minnesota series, because it's just, I said on Saturday, my post-game recap, it's tough to talk about because it's the same thing every night.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know how you do it because then in baseball, it's you don't want to react too much to one game, right? And it's so you kind of, but then you start looking at it. Just these games feel all the same, and they all kind of fit the theme of what the bats have done. So, you know, I don't know what to do. It's they just have been not very good. The strikeouts are an issue, and I know you can look at like some statistical data that says strikeouts don't really matter. But I think to the extent we're striking out, they do. There's just way too many when you get guys in scoring position. Sometimes you just need a productive out where you dink one or it goes the other way, you move a runner up. Like you said, you bloop one in. And so it's just been more of the same, too many strikeouts. Your key guys not getting it done. Julio specifically, you keep waiting for him to turn around because he's such a good hitter, 23 years old. He's proven he can do it before in his 2 years in the major league. So I don't know. I think Blowers and Goldsmith, I think it was maybe Saturday, they were just kind of saying like baseball's weird. And he's like, we keep waiting for this offense to turn it around. You never really know when it's going to happen, but we're sitting here past the halfway mark. And, I think there was at one point from like April 15th, I forget where it ended, but when the offense was actually pretty good. It's maybe a 3-week stretch. But I think that's been the issue this year is the prior 2 years, we've ended up being a league average offense, but I think that people don't realize it because our struggles could be so frustrating. But we had enough stretches of where we were at like a very, very good offense, but we just aren't having enough of those to offset the challenges. A lot of it's just been sitting in that struggle mode. We maybe have had 2 or 3 weeks where we do perform like a top 10 offense. And yeah, this week and overall, it was very, very difficult to watch.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with the strikeouts because I've kind of said that in my videos, like, because people are like, oh, the strikeouts. I'm like, well, strikeouts are outs. At the end of the day, like the goal's to not make an out. A strikeout isn't that much different than rolling over one to second. But you're right. I think when you're strikeout to the extent of this team that this team is, if they were like, I'm sure they're still first in strikeout percentage in baseball. I'd be blown away if they're not. If they were by first, I mean worse. So I guess 30th, however you want to, do that. If they were 27th or 25th, you could probably survive with it, but they have been so bad at it that it is it is noticeable, and it is better to put the ball in play. More things can happen. And we've seen it, right? Like that weird inning yesterday where the Twins were bobbling the ball all over the place. You put the ball in play and sometimes funky things can happen. You force the other team to make a play at least, but yeah. And it's tough for me too, because I go through this. I look at the opposing pitchers we're playing and I do the post-game recaps. And I'm like, Pablo Lopez is good. He's better than a 5 ERA. I don't expect the Mariners to go in and get 8 runs off of him. But it's like every time we see these guys that are underperforming, they always get right against the Mariners. Why? Like, why can't we be the team that just keeps their bad streak going? It's so frustrating. I will say it does feel like the Mariners have played against some really good. I'm not trying to make excuses for anybody listening to this, but I feel like every series we face a lot of good starting pitching. Is that just me trying to cope? Or do you think I'm not expecting you to go through every game and look at all the pitchers we face, but I do feel like we face a really good run of pitching a lot.
Yeah, I think a little bit's probably cope, but I also think that is the truth. And, next 2 nights we got Grayson Rodriguez and Corbin Burns, right? So it doesn't get any easier. So I think that is part of it. But, you look at the Marlins series, we had a couple of really good matchups there. We took advantage of one of them. And then that Friday, Sunday night game, we didn't do so much. And even like the Guardians series, I think we faced Tanner Bybee, who's really good. The other two, Logan Allen and McKenzie. McKenzie just got sent down. So I think it's a little bit of both of, I think we have faced a lot of really good pitching, but part of it's on our own doing as well.
Yeah. And then just going into some individual performances, we kind of just talked about the team as a whole. I don't know if you saw the thing today or the tweet that it had every team that had the player that's taken the most at bats from every team ranked by OPS. And Julio's taken the most at bats on the Mariners and is dead last. For if I make, I'm not describing that stat well at all, but he is dead last of the team leader in at bats in baseball for OPS. And it's not just Julio, but man, is that just, to me, it's got to be the main focus. I mean, he should be the best player. I'm not trying to put too much on a 23-year-old, but he's got a 623 OPS, and OPS isn't the end all be all, but it seems to start with Julio for me. What about you?
Yep, completely agree. And yeah, I saw that stat too. And yeah, it's what you want, right? Going into the year, you would love to see Julio leading the Mariners in at bats. It means he's healthy, but I think, it's insane to me that Julio was at the bottom of that list, because you just would never expect that in 1,000 years. And if he's even middle of that list, he'd be having a down season by his standards, and we'd be in a lot better shape. But yeah, I mean, he's the driver of the team. I think have said, like, look at the Yankees last year. Once Aaron Judge went down, they are in a world of hurt. So if you're a team that's built around like a MVP level superstar like Julio is, I think it's fair to expect that you're going to struggle a little bit if they're performing this poorly. And like you said, not to put it all on him, there's a lot others that are struggling as well. But if Julio were to turn it around tomorrow, through the rest of the season, I would venture to guess our offense would be at least league average or better the rest of the year. I think he really is kind of the straw that stirs the drink. So I think that's where it starts, is hopefully Julio can turn it around, because if not, I think it's going to be more of the same, unfortunately.
And I think he's the most obvious that we expect to turn it around too.
Mhm.
Not saying I don't expect Polanco, Garver, or Cal to be a little bit better. For Cal, at the very least, he's been good in clutch situations and high leverage
Yeah.
spots. So it's masked, a bit of a poor season from him. And, I have a lot of people, and I'm not picking on anybody here, but like, oh, we need to move Julio down in the order, need to move him down. I get why people are saying that, but for who? The whole
Right.
lineup is struggling. Like, who are you batting third and fourth right now? And I think what Scott's doing, this is just my thought on it, it's like, eventually just hope these guys come out of it. There's not much else you can do. If you have Patrick Mahomes, not comparing Julio to Patrick Mahomes, just making an analogy, and he's been terrible for 8 weeks. What are you going to do? You just got to hope he gets better.
Yep, completely agree. And like you said, there's not really another option to move up in the lineup. I think you're right. He's just kind of sticking with the guys they expected to kind of get them to where they want to go, and they're going to live and die with them. Whether that's right or wrong, we'll see. But I can see the thought, in doing so. I think it makes sense to me, certainly to some degree.
Yeah, and I get it. Like, for people that are saying moving down, listen, if it gets them going, and if I'm all for anything, like, listen, put Cal, I don't care, put Cal lead off, like something. If it gets the guys going and playing better, I'm all for it. I really won't throw a fit about much, but I just think to defend a little bit the coaching staff, I think they're kind of looking at it like, for who? Or, even
Right.
like, oh, send these guys down for who? It's just eventually they've got to play better. They're the core of your team. And I even think that's why, I know a lot of people like, oh, Ryan Bliss should be getting at bats over Polanco. And I know me and you have talked about that. And I think we're kind of getting there too, but you've got to see if you have something in the tank with a Jorge Polanco.
Yep, for sure.
And yeah, and it's just like I said, it's just really everybody. It comes down to it. At the end of the day, we're going back and forth on this, and I think all the fans are too, because you just have so many players underperforming. In terms of the AL West, the Mariners' once glorious 10-game lead that feels like was just 3 days ago. I know it's more than that, but is now down to 3 games. What's your thoughts on the surging Astros and the Mariners' chances in the American League West right now?
Yeah, it's terrifying. I know we were talking about this before the show, that it's just the timing of it. Our 4-8 stretch combined with the Astros, like 10-1 in their last 11, the best record in June. The timing couldn't be worse. I mean, we were saying, like, look at the Rangers, right? I think they've gained maybe 1 game on us, and so just the timing of it's awful. In terms of, like, my hopes, obviously concerned. I think going into the year, I figured the Astros were probably slightly better. At this point, with 3 games, it's easy enough for them to make up. That you got, Kyle Tucker and Verlander coming back. We're 5-2 against them, so it's likely we'll have the tiebreaker. So it's, in reality, maybe 4-game lead, but it's not much. And I think I made a point yesterday that the Mariners, they built that 10-game lead, and it wasn't necessarily because of what they did. They did their part pitching. They got enough clutch hitting to, get the 10 games over 500 or whatever it was. But that 10-game lead was really built on the Astros struggling beyond what anybody expected. And now that that's gone, now the onus is kind of on the Mariners to do their part to hold them off. And so, yeah, it's going to be an absolute battle, or at least I hope it is, and that the Astros do slow down and we kind of figure it out. Because I think going into the year, say Astros are 5 or 6 games better than us. Well, we're halfway through. We have that 3 or 4 game buffer. I would expect it to be very, very close if both teams played to kind of their potential and expectations. And then, with our farm system, I think we can improve more than they can. But we have to play the expectations, and they have to kind of come back down towards expectations too, or all that's thrown out the window.
Yeah, and it's really just been, like we talked about, and I talked about a few times on my show. The 10-game lead was great. Not that I think both of us, we didn't expect the Mariners to win this division by 10 games, but we kind of felt it gave enough of a cushion that it could allow you to be a little bit more patient with acquiring players or overpaying. And we kind of figured, hey, you just kind of go 500 the next couple weeks, you should be 6, 7 games up. You made a great point. Texas, through this whole stretch here with the Mariners struggling, including with them sweeping Kansas City during that stretch, they've gained 1 game. They're still 9 games out. And, for me, and we talked about this a little bit before the show, Houston and Texas both kind of looked mediocre to me. They just
Mhm.
looked like middling teams. And it wasn't so much that, oh, I think the Mariners are a 100-win team, but they did look better than both those teams. And now Houston has just gone on an absolute tear. And like you said, it's just coincided perfectly with the Mariners having a little bit of a dip. The biggest cope I can have for this, and I say this in all my videos, so people are probably tired of hearing it. If you'd have told me before the season, I think we've played 86 games. We had 85 or 86. Do you know, top of your head? I
I
think
don't.
80. It's one of the two. If you would have told me that before the season, hey, Jay, at this point in the year, the Mariners will be 3 games up in the division. Do you sign up for that? Absolutely. I absolutely would have taken that. Now, that doesn't excuse the way the team's played the last couple of weeks. But, if we take a step back and look big picture, they are in pretty decent position. Is that fair to say?
Yep, no, I agree. Yeah, I would have done the same if give us a 3-game lead, 85 games in, would have signed up for it. So, yeah, from a standings perspective, they're in good shape. I don't think I would have necessarily signed up with how they've gotten here, so that's part of it. But yeah, from the lead they've got, I absolutely would have signed up. And so, yeah, we'll see if they can hang on.
Yeah, and I know people are watching this because they hear me say all the time. Obviously, would have told me, but hey, in 75 games through the year, you'll have a 10-game lead. Do you take the 3-game lead? I would have said no. I'll stick with the 10-game lead and hope we can build on that. So yeah, like you
Right.
said, certainly the way it's gotten there has not been pretty. But I'm just trying to look at it from a big picture perspective.
Yep.
That as negative as it feels right now. And then these stretches do happen in baseball. It's such a weird sport and a unique sport. You play 162, you're going to go through a rough patch. I don't know. I guess I'm trying to reach for anything cope to kind of get us back going here a little bit, but it is what it is. And right now it's a 3-game lead, and hopefully there is room to improve for the Mariners. There's certainly
Right.
a lot of easy, I want to say easy fixes, but a lot of easy answers for how they can get better, I think.
Yep. Completely agree.
So on that same vein, we did talk about the offense a little bit, but we are approaching the trade deadline. It sounds teams starting to make, well, maybe not making moves, but we're getting close to that point when we're expecting moves to happen. Jerry DePoto was on MLB Network on Sunday and talked about a couple things. He mentioned that it's unfortunately not a lot of sellers right now. That third wild card, especially in the National League. I mean, you've got everybody that's not Miami and Colorado still in the hunt there.
Yep.
What's your thoughts on kind of where this team is at acquiring players and what they need to do?
Yeah, I do think it's a little bit tricky with the third wild card and just how close teams are. And to your point, the Marlins and Rockies, they have some interesting pieces to sell, but there's not a ton. And then the AL, you've got Angels and Oakland who may not even trade with you. And then the Blue Jays are trending to be a seller, which is interesting, but they may just hold on to Bichette and Vlad and try again next year. So from an impact perspective, I just don't know what players are going to be out there. And so, one of the things that was mentioned on the radio on Sunday, I think the host kind of posed it to Jerry, and it was from like a conversation I think he had with the Dodgers GM. In like, hey, sometimes, I think Andrew Freeman mentions they look for cage guys, meaning guys that can produce on the field, but also you get them around the batting cage and they can just kind of talk hitting, talk baseball with guys and elevate, those around him. And, Jerry kind of said, like, listen, we did that with Carlos Santana a couple of years ago, and we thought that it was a great return. And yeah, we absolutely could look at that for a few reasons. One, just because we think it could make people better. And the best thing that we think we can do is turn the dial internally and get improvements. And he's like, and two, just with the supply that's out there, that may be really that's all available. So I think, looking for a second baseman or third baseman, just because Rojas can move around and he has cooled off a little bit. I think that, first base is a realistic place to improve, and then corner outfield, DH as well. So I think they're in a spot where they can go get maybe the best hitter or two that's available and plug them in wherever they, best fit on a position wise, and then shuffle guys around. I think we'll get a look at Wu. Jerry made it sound like he'll make one start before the trade deadline. That still makes me nervous. But I think Hancock's a viable back end guy. So, maybe you trade for a start, but maybe you don't have to. And then bullpen, it sounded like Santos could be back within 10 days, and then Gabe Spire right after the trade deadline. And so from the bullpen perspective, if Santos looks dominant, do you have to do anything there? I don't know. You always would feel better with another bullpen arm, but I think everybody would agree that the best thing they can do is go acquire a couple bats. I just don't know if it's going to be the impact that people want. And then even then, if the guys that we currently have don't pick it up, it's just not going to matter. The offense, say you go get a Luis Robert and I don't know, Mark Canha. And if Robert gets hot, teams can pitch around him if nobody else is stepping up in the lineup. And so it won't matter. So that, like we've said on shows before, that the players that we have to pick it up, or else the offense simply can't really be fixed at the deadline, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I thought, I saw you were talking about that on Twitter yesterday. I thought it was a great point, and we've talked about it before, and I know Jerry's mentioned it. It's made some people mad, but he's right. Like if the best thing the Mariners can do right now is Julio Rodriguez, hitting like Julio Rodriguez, Jorge Polanco. I hate to use the term, but like playing to the back of their baseball cards. If these guys could do that, that's the biggest boost you can get from this offense. And I'm with you in terms of back end starter. If you can get that offensive boost, these guys playing better, I think Emerson Hancock's fine. I think you've got Castillo, Gilbert, Kirby. I'm not starting Hancock in a playoff game, but if the offense is a little bit better, he's going to give you a chance to win most of the time. If Brian Wu has to miss time, I've advocated for a bullpen arm, but now we're at the point where it really does sound like Santos is close. Spire coming back, that could be enough of a boost as long as Santos looks like he's legitimately back and not still banged up or not pitching at 100%. I think that's your bullpen boost. And offensively, it's like you said, you can go get Luis Robert. It's going to help. You're better with Luis Robert in your starting lineup. But unless these guys start hitting, it's still just going to be, it's just one person. You might be better off. And the bevy of prospects you're going to have to give up for Luis Robert. Now, if you're 8 games up, I'm a little bit more willing to do it. Now that the lead's shrinking, I'm a little bit more like, well, maybe I go get Nico Horner was a name that was mentioned today by Morosi. Yep. Maybe I go get Nico Horner, Mark Canha, or, something like that and just hope the guys heat up. Canha's your improvement over Haniger, and Horner is your, Polanco Rojas kind of, or whoever you want to have him replace there. And you hope the bats get going.
Yep. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if they do, but maybe the route they have to go just, due to what's available. Yeah. I mean, I want them to go make improvements. It's not that I don't want them to, but it just, I think the matter of the fact that if the internal improvements don't come, the external improvements may not be enough to hold off the Astros.
And you made a great point. We started this conversation too. You've got Miami, Colorado, Oakland and LA. You don't even know if they're going to trade with you. And even then, not saying that they'd have anybody that would cost you Colt Emerson or Lazaro Montez or those guys. But, from the Mariners perspective, do you want to ship those guys in the division and have Montez in Oakland for the next 15 years? Probably not. You'd prefer them to go in the National League if you've got to make that trade. And really, the only big bat that we know for sure is probably available is Luis Robert. The rest is all, and like you said, Colorado, Miami have some interesting pieces. De La Cruz would be an interesting guy to add. He would help. But I don't know how much that really moves the needle, that much. It might be better than Mitch Haniger, but I don't think it, and I'm not against it. I'm not against any of these moves, if the price is right, but it's really interesting. And it's a tough deadline, or it's a tough move for the Mariners because there's so many positions that you could logically want to improve on.
Right. For sure.
So, it's, we'll see what they end up doing here, but, and we're not, from my perspective, I'm not trying to be down on it. I'm all for the team making a move. They got Luis Robert tonight while we're doing this. I'll be ecstatic. It'll be so cool to have Luis Robert in this lineup.
For sure.
But it's just trying to logically look at it and what this team is going to do. And I think a lot will depend on where they're at too over the next week and a half in the standings as well. If they can up that 3-game lead a little bit, it certainly may help. The month of June as a whole for the Seattle Mariners, I know I'm kind of bouncing around here, believe they finished 15-11 right in June. So they actually had a fairly productive June if we take away the last week and a half overall. And it doesn't get any easier with the Baltimore Orioles coming into town next. Thoughts
No.
on the upcoming series with Baltimore? As we're into July now, I meant to say.
Yeah, terrifying. I know. I'm just looking at the June statistics. They hit 60 home runs in June. The next closest team hit 42. So the Orioles have been absolutely, smashing the baseball, hitting even better than, scored 13 more runs than the Twins did. And I think in June, I heard for the Twins, their OPS was basically like what Bobby Witt is on the year, I think
Yeah.
is what Goldie had said. And so, you're facing Bobby Witt every single at bat. So, Baltimore's not going to be any easier. And then you get their two horses and Rodriguez and Burns. And it's not a team you want to be facing when you're struggling with, how they're going and just how potent they are. So it's a series that definitely terrifies me. And if we could get a series win, I would be absolutely thrilled. I don't want to say I'm hoping we just get one because at this point we got to start winning series, but it'll be incredibly difficult to get 2 out of 3 for sure. Just the way the pitching matchups and all that align and how well they're swinging the bat.
Yeah, and Baltimore is just a team that is. I mean, that they can pitch, they can hit. They're good at the back end of the bullpen with even without
Yep.
Bautista, with Cano back there. Hopefully the calendar. I don't put much stock in. Oh, the calendar flipped, but I'm clinging for anything here. So maybe going to July. I will say I think we talked about a week ago how they were actually a little bit of a tailspin. I think they lost 6 in a row. Of course, Houston swept them. And we were both me and you kind of shared the same thoughts on that. I hate playing a team like that when they're cold because they're not
Yep.
going to stay cold forever. They have started to play better. I think they took 3 out of 4 from Texas this weekend.
Yep.
So they're starting to play a little better ball. They did lose Sunday. I mean, maybe, we talked about this before we came on. Baseball's weird. I'm not predicting the Mariners are going to sweep. But, I would certainly never do that against Baltimore. They're going to predict they'd win a series. But baseball is weird, and the Mariners could find a way to scrap out a couple wins. And my gosh, could they use a series win after losing 4 in a row, 4 series
For
in a row?
sure. It looks like we've got, I thought Gilbert was going
It's Kirby.
tomorrow,
I
but
think Kirby.
Fangraphs is showing, it is Kirby. Okay. So, talk about Rodriguez and Burns going, but hey, we counter with Kirby and Gilbert, who are both going very, very well. And then game 3 is Bryce Miller versus Dean Kramer. I think he's on the IL. So if not, it'll be like that Suarez guy. So, I mean, really, the pitching matchups, all 3 games, I think are at least even, we'll call it. So, but of course, they have the lineup advantage. We'll see what happens. It would be a great sign if we could take 2 out of 3 and get moving against, the Orioles for sure. Like you said, baseball is weird. You really don't know what's going to happen.
And, one thing with the Mariners, the pitching is good enough, and we know how good it's been at home. Bryce Miller's been lights out at home, and Kirby and Gilbert have too. Listen, you got good starting pitching. They'll keep in the game. The Mariners will have a chance in this series, likely to win a couple games. Anytime you've got George Kirby and Logan Gilbert on the mound, they're probably going to give you a chance to win it. So as much as it feels like a doom and gloom, the Mariners probably do have a slight advantage in the pitching matchups. That varies. And like you said, the Orioles certainly have a massive offensive advantage, but you're probably going to have a shot to win it. And listen, I hate saying the offense is due. We're more than halfway through the year and they have not been good, but who knows?
No.
Maybe this is where they find it. I'm willing to cling to anything right now.
Yep. Let's sure hope so.
One thing I want to ask, I know we didn't really talk about this before, so I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot here, but I just thought about when we were talking about this. The home and road splits for the pitchers have been really severe. Now, listen, I think we all expect T-Mobile's a pitcher park and you're at home. You're going to pitch better in that environment. But do you think there's anything more to that, or do you think it's just kind of still a small enough sample when you're looking at minimal starts with the splits? Bryce Miller, especially, I think his ERA is in the 6s. Yep. On the road. Do you have any thoughts on that? Didn't mean to put you on the spot with that question. We didn't really talk about
it's a
that.
good question. Yeah, I think it's interesting because, obviously you expect a better ERA at T-Mobile versus the road. We know it's an extremely friendly hitter's park. But if I recall this right, I think last week when I looked, we were first in strikeout rate at home and like in the bottom 10 on the road. And it's 60 feet, 6 inches, whether you're at home on the road. So you just wouldn't think that would be that drastic of a difference. So I don't know what's going on. I think that Divish talked about it on the podcast. And he's like, I know the pitchers feel very, very comfortable in Seattle. So maybe there's just kind of a mindset tweak that needs fixed. And then he also made a good point that you played at the Yankees, you played, at the Orioles, at Cleveland. Orioles are coming into town. We haven't played. So you thought maybe part of it was schedule related too. We played, at KC. I don't know if we played them at home yet, but I think that was part of it too. But I would expect that to normalize. It probably is somewhat of a sample size issue as well, just because, once again, I expect the numbers to be a little bit worse on the road, but not as drastic as they are. So hopefully that does turn around a little bit.
And yeah, we have played Kansas City both home and the road, and
Okay.
not surprisingly, we actually pitched very well
Mhm.
against them in Seattle. Kirby dominated them. Gilbert was good. I think Velasquez hit a home run off them late, and Wu was really good on the road struggle. So that's a great point. It could just be, and obviously, I know people are going small sample. We're more than halfway through, but when we're breaking down road starts versus home starts in each pitcher, we're probably talking about 6-7 games in each
Yep.
park potentially for each of these guys, which is a small sample size. But yeah, I think the strikeouts are probably the most glaring. The ERA could make sense. You're in Yankee Stadium and someone puts one in over the right field fence that's, a unicorn that would have been out in no other ballpark. So that can make some sense. Like I said, the strikeouts are a little alarming just because, like I said, 60 feet, 6 inches every ballpark. So that to me is a little concerning. If that was steady and the ERAs would higher, I'd probably just say whatever to it.
Right.
But I think you brought up a good point. I'm trying to think, and we played in Minnesota. Minnesota, I think, is actually a pitcher's park, but it's still a good offense. I can't think of actually a lot of bad teams we played on the road. Colorado, and they pitched fine against them. So
Yeah.
it might just be a matter of they've played, a lot of good teams on the road so far. So yeah, I don't know if there's much there. It's certainly something to keep an eye on. And then really the only outlier that's like, oh my gosh, is Bryce Miller. And I think that makes some sense a little bit.
Yep, for sure. The one thing I
Yeah.
will add, kind of going back to the question on like the AL West, I was looking at
Mhm.
the rest of the season, strength of schedule. Once again, this doesn't matter unless we kind of turn it around, but we have the easiest schedule remaining in the AL. And I think Houston's kind of actually back towards the middle. When I looked, I know we have 3 against Baltimore, 3 against the Dodgers, 3 against Yankees. And then other than that, I don't think we really play any what I would consider elite teams anymore, unless you want to throw like the Astros in there. So that's another reason I do have some hope that, maybe we can end up winning the AL West. It's just our schedule is, especially when you get past the Orioles, there's just not a ton of really, really tough series we're going into it. You're hoping just to get one. So that's one thing I meant to add earlier on kind of the AL West conversation is the schedule does work in our favor. So hopefully we can take advantage of that the rest of the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, it's a great point. We're done with Cleveland, done with Minnesota, done with Kansas City. We haven't played Detroit yet, who's not
Yep.
awful, but they're not good. We still get to play the White Sox again. Boston's average. Toronto hasn't been good. Like I said, the Yankees, Dodgers, and Orioles. And I think you're right. I think everybody else is kind of, you got like the Cardinals in there. You've got some teams that can beat
Yep.
you. And like you said, listen, it's not going to matter if the Mariners don't start playing better ball. They lost a series in Miami. So, I don't think either of us are trying to say, oh, the schedule, here we go. But you're going to have some advantage in the matchups. You still got to play. You still have 3 series against the Angels.
Yep.
You still got Oakland twice. So there is going to be opportunities for this team to cash in some wins. And like I said, Houston's going to be tough, but they're the team you got to beat. So it's kind of like, if you can't beat them, then I guess it's whatever anyways with the division. So, and
Right.
honestly, I'm gonna throw Texas in there as kind of a mediocre team, to be
Yep.
honest, right now.
For
Um,
sure.
do you think Texas is done? I know I'm throwing more questions at you here, but I'm kind of like, I think it's Houston or Seattle in the West. I just don't see Texas. They're going to go on a 10-game winning streak now that I said
Yeah.
this, but I think they're kind of done.
I think so. It's, they had their chance to kind of make up some ground while we went through a big time stretch. And now they have to catch, could they catch the Mariners? Maybe, but the Mariners and Astros, I don't see both of us playing bad enough to allow Texas to catch both of us. So I guess that would be my answer. They could catch us if we continue to scuffle, but I don't think they would catch the Astros too, because I just don't see both of us sliding. And they will get, DeGrom back, Tyler Mahle. There might be one other
They
guy
got
returning.
Scherzer back.
Yeah, Scherzer's back, so they'll get better. And their lineup is kind of struggling compared to last year. But I also think that last year they had like everybody have career highs, and so I thought that was a little bit of fool's gold. And I think we're kind of seeing that turn, kind of maybe normalize a little bit. So, yep, I do think it's for like you said, they'll probably win 28 in a row now. But I do think it's an Astros Mariners race at this point.
Yeah, and I think Texas too. If you looked at like the Fangraphs preseason playoff odds and their record, they were about a 500 team, and they're
Yep.
kind of playing that. I'm kind of at the point like if Texas catches the Mariners, then I'm just assuming Houston's run away with the division at
Right.
that point, essentially. So not that I'm not worried about Texas. They're still gonna be tough. You still got to play them six times or so. So they'll be a tough opponent. But I'm pretty much in the 2-horse race now. Any other thoughts on the Mariners? Anything else you got that you wanted to share that maybe I missed that you wanted to go over?
Nope, I don't think so. Hopefully, Julio turns it around. Polanco's on, I think, what, a 4-game hit streak. But like I said, I think on the tweet that he's on a 4-game hit streak, but one of them was a bunt. He has hit a couple balls hard, but the other 3 at bats in the game are awful. So I'm not like as hopeful on a 4-game hit streak as I would otherwise. But hopefully, and he has hit a couple fastballs hard, which has been good because before the IL, he wasn't touching them. And so I think he hit like a 99-mile-an-hour one hard. The other day was like off 96. So maybe he's turning around. Hopefully, Garver's okay. I know that he had like a 130 WRC plus in June, even though he had like a 180 average, but it was, 350 on base and power. So I do hope he's okay, because if not, I don't even know who would. Maybe they call up Locklear to DH, and maybe he's fine, but Garver was going well. But yeah, I think it just comes down to, can Julio, Polanco, can Raleigh get more consistent? JP has been a lot better lately, but I just, hope those guys that we went into the year thinking would be the key pieces at least even get the league average, because the role players for the most part have done their job. And so if the kind of the key players can get going, league average, I think the offense can be at least league average, which is maybe all they need to be. So hopefully this week is better than the last few.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I actually wanted to bring that up. The role players, Dylan Moore's been what you'd expect Dylan Moore to be. Josh Rojas has cooled off, but I think for the most part, as a platoon side of third base, he's been fine. Luke Raley, if you want to kind of consider him a role player, has been fine. It's really the core guys that
Yep.
have been frustrating. Ryan Bliss has been fine. There's a lot of swing and miss there, but Victor Robles has been pretty solid for the Mariners. But if it's the core, and I hate, I don't hate doing it, but it's like we can go through every name. Ty France needs to be better. Jorge Polanco has to be better. JP has to be better. Cal has to be better. Julio has to be better. It's every single one of them, and you can't trade all 7 of them. You can maybe move on from 1 or 2. And you brought up the Polanco 4-game hitting streak, and I did too. Well, I was going to in the post-game recap, and I got some flack because I mentioned on Friday that I thought Julio's at bat, that he reached on the air in the 7th inning or 8th inning, whatever. And I said, hey, that was a pretty good at bat. And some people kind of ripped me for it. I'm just looking for anything, a silver lining. He worked into a good count. He put the ball in play and good things happen. I'm not trying to praise that. And I'm same thing with Polanco. Like, listen, I'll take anything. It was good to see him turn the 99 on Alcala. And it was good yesterday to see him put one off the fence. I don't think either of us are claiming Polanco's back, but we need something. Maybe it's a sign. We'll take it.
Yep, for sure.
So, you know what? I want to bring up one more thing, and I'm sorry do you have a couple more minutes?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay. So yesterday's game a little bit, because I was thinking in the whole thing with Luis Castillo having to bat, they lose Mitch Garver, and in that 5th, 2 things. Luis Castillo's at bat where they didn't have him swing. I know there was some controversy around it that people thought he should have bunted, should have swung. I would have been fine if he tried to lay down a bunt there. Did you have any thoughts on that? I just thought it was kind of interesting to talk about.
I think at first I was a little bit annoyed that he wasn't trying to bunt, but then the more I thought about it, I'm like, bunting can be, I mean, like, I know when I had a, square around a bunt in high school, it's terrifying. You're kind of exposed, right? If a ball gets away from a pitcher, it's hard to get out of the way. Yeah. Right. And so, and I don't think you want to have him go swing, because I mean, what if he pulls an oblique or something and he's out for him? So there's just the risk of an injury, even though it's so slight, is not worth trying to move up a runner 90 feet or get, 1 run. So yeah, at first I was a little bit annoyed, but the more I thought about it, I'm like, they did the right thing. Why risk getting Luis Castillo hurt? Because odds are he's not going to get the bunt down or get a hit anyway. So I think they did the right thing.
That was my thought too. Initially, I'm like, are you kidding me? Your offense has been terrible and you're going to give up an at bat. But it's like, that's not Luis Castillo's fault. The offense is terrible. Like, you need other guys to step up. And then the other one, I think you kind of talked about it on Twitter a little bit. I don't know if it was this at bat, but in the 5th inning, it was in the 5th. They had Ryan Bliss pinch hit for Luis Castillo with the bases loaded, 1 out. Now, they had to pinch hit there. I was even sitting with my family watching it. I'm like, you can't have Castillo take this at bat. It stinks. You got to pull him, but someone else has to take this. I thought Bliss was kind of an odd choice in that situation. I know Canzone hasn't been great in those spots, but I just feel like I trust his bat more than Bliss. What'd you think of that? I don't know. I don't think that cost them the game. They didn't play well, but I thought it was a weird choice to go to Bliss.
Same thing. Couple things on that. I thought, like, one, Haniger could have been a good fit. He's a veteran bat who actually hasn't been striking out a ton. He hit a home run the night before. Friday night, I think he had 2 walks. So I thought Haniger would have been a good choice. And then also that position is the pitcher's coming back in. So Haniger, you don't necessarily want to put him out on defense or base running late in the game. So I thought it was kind of weird to burn Bliss too, because he could be like a pinch runner late in the game. So in my mind, I was like, Haniger's probably, and Bliss hadn't played in a while. So I was like, I would have loved Haniger, the veteran at bat. And then, yeah, Canzone too. He had an awful game Friday, one of the worst I've ever seen. It was just lost. I was a little surprised they sat him Saturday and Sunday, because I looked at his June. I think he had like a 280 average, 350 on base, like 125 WRC plus. So he'd been swinging the bat well in June. And I think it's a little bit odd to kind of punish him for one awful game. And so same thing, there was a righty on the mound. He does have quite a bit of strikeout, but so does Bliss. So I would have went either, probably Haniger would have been my first choice, Canzone 2, and then, I think Bliss 3. So I a little bit surprised they went that route. I don't know if they're like worried about trying to stay out of a double play on the ground or like what the thought is, but I was definitely surprised by that.
Yeah, and to Scott's defense there, Haniger's been struggling. I'm with you. Haniger had a couple good games, and I've kind of ripped Haniger a lot, but I think, like you said, veteran presence there, probably a better bet. So I get it. Like, there's not a lot of great options in that situation, but it kind of felt like saving guys for later. I just feel like right there, you need the runs right then and there. And I think you're right. I think they're trying to stay out of the double play and everything, but man, it felt like a tough spot to send Bliss up in that situation. And I think maybe a little bit of overthinking the situation and I think Scott's trying to look at it and go, okay, want Mitch for later in the game when I might have a crucial at bat, but then Mitch ends up hitting against Duran with 2 outs in the 9th inning. And it's like, okay, you're not going to do anything there. And like I said, and man, to your point on Canzone has got to be like one of the weirdest profiles I've ever seen with baseball. I don't know what to make. I promise, last thing, what's your thoughts on Canzone? Because he has some of the worst at-bats you'll ever see. These swings that, like, when you watch baseball players, you see them swing and miss, they're always close. It's amazing how close these guys actually get to hitting a baseball. Canzone will have some where he's swinging at the top of the zone and the ball is like in the dirt sometimes. But he's produced some okay numbers. He's not been a terrible hitter overall. And then he hasn't been good in the clutch, which I don't put a lot of stock into necessarily. But just one of the weirdest guys I've ever seen, I think, in my opinion.
I agree, because last year he barely struck out any. Like, his barrel rate was insane. I remember that he was like one of 7 players, and he wasn't like qualified, but it was like Soto, Judge. I mean, like all these elite players who had the low K percent that he did with the barrel percent that he did. And I'm like, that plays. I mean, if you don't strike out and you're getting that many balls in play with that many barrels, you're in a good spot. And then this year, barrel rate, hard hit rate still really good, but his strikeouts are way up. But I would agree. He's got a 104 WRC plus on the year, so above league bad. His defense is much improved, but some of his at bats are just so terrible. You're like, oh my god! And then he goes in some pretty rough stretches too. And so it's a tough player to pin, because when he's going that poor, it's really hard to watch and play. But overall, there's also some encouraging things in his profile. So I don't know what to make of him for sure. It's an interesting profile.
Yeah, it's really, like I said, 104 WRC plus on the Mariners. That is, prime Barry Bonds on this lineup. So I'm with you. I thought it was kind of odd that it almost seemed like they benched him for that Friday game a little bit, which I'm with you. He had some bad at-bats, but I mean, so was everybody else in this lineup. So it's just a little surprising. He's such a weird player, and he's just one I can't get a read on. I don't know what to make of him. I like the profile, but there's times I'm like, oh my God, like honestly, even yesterday, he probably would have struck out in that at-bat, but he's also capable. I mean, his raw power, I think I would put him up there with Julio and Cal on the team for the most raw power. So just
Yep.
a really odd player, and probably the Mariners been an odd team, so probably a good player to end this podcast on. So as
For
always, I
sure.
appreciate you coming on. Remember, everybody, hit that like button for us, helps out tremendously. Subscribe if you're new. Comment your thoughts on the team down below. We'll be back this weekend to break down the Orioles series and then the Blue Jays series as well. So hopefully the Mariners can finish up this homestand with some wins and, keep that first place lead as we get closer to the All-Star break, and truthfully closer to the last third of the season has just flown by as always. So thank you, man, again for joining me. Always appreciate your insights and for coming on here and for staying a little bit later today. So have a great night. Everybody watching, have a great night. Take care. And as always, go Mariners. Peace.